The state of Tennessee is one example of what it will look like when the eviction moratorium ends. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over exactly what's going on in Tennessee. Now, as I covered in another article, right now Tennessee is not abiding by the new CDC eviction moratorium because the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the CDC didn't have authority to issue an eviction moratorium and it's unlawful. So obviously that decision isn't binding throughout all the states in the country, and the moratorium continues to exist for most of us. But at least in the state of Tennessee, we have now an example of exactly what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium finally does end for the rest of us. But before I get into that article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think of all of these eviction moratoriums and all of this complete nonsense. I'm going to work to keep bringing you articles about the eviction moratorium and other news that's of interest to landlords. So, this article, it comes from WSMV.com, and it says, evictions piling up in Tennessee with moratorium ended. Yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise to you, but as soon as the eviction moratorium was officially over, landlords have just filed a ton of evictions against these non-paying tenants, okay? And rightfully so. I mean, they have been sitting here not getting reimbursed through rental assistance programs, not making any money for a very, very long amount of time. And the tenants who have sat there and they've abused these landlords for just so long, they just got to get rid of them. I mean, that's the only solution to this problem at this point. But let's look at this article and see what it says about the situation. Evictions in Tennessee continue to rise since the CDC moratorium ended in July. Even though a new moratorium was issued by the CDC, that does not apply in Tennessee because of a ruling by the Sixth Circuit Federal Court. The ruling is leaving many Tennesseans in a bad spot, especially ones that have been behind on rent for months. It means everything is on the table for both tenants and landlords. Now, listen, it's really the landlords who are in the worst spot, okay? Now, even if they are able to get this eviction against the tenant, that means they are still out of all those previous months' rent, and they are stuck with this vacant property, and now they have to get another tenant up into the property and fix any damages and repairs that the previous tenant left in there. So it's a losing situation for a landlord to even go through an eviction. The best situation would have been if the tenant could have been able to keep paying, but that obviously was not the case. Now, I personally don't think that the rental assistance programs are enough to make landlords whole again. Okay, we're talking about programs that disqualify tenants who make over 80% of the median household income for the area. So if you have a tenant who made more than that amount, then you're not even qualified for rental assistance yet. You might have still been unable to evict that tenant. All right. Attorney Zach Oswald with Legal Aid Society says people facing eviction need to follow 3 steps. Apply for rent relief immediately, go to court explaining your situation to a judge, landlord, and attorneys, and reach out to an attorney at Legal Aid Society. Both Oswald and the advocacy group Red Door Collective say many people being served a detainer warrant for not paying their rent don't know what to do and think they have no one on their side. Because of that, Oswald says these people might not follow the process correctly and might either skip court or vacate the property and have an eviction on their permanent record, which in turn may prevent you from renting again. I guarantee that if you were working with the landlord and you were really, struggling financially and you're working hard to get that rental assistance to the landlord, that the landlord would be willing to work with you. The problem isn't those people. The problem is the people who aren't working with the landlord. So when I look here and I see this attorney with this Legal Aid Society who is saying that, the problem is that, people are, frustrated and they don't know what to do and then they just abandon the property. Well, that is their fault, okay? That is their own fault. All of these different, processes and procedures, they are all part of the system, okay? And if you aren't willing to follow that system, then you deserve to have an eviction on your record. You deserve to have an eviction on your record if you skip out on owing the landlord months and months of rent, or leave your property damaged, and, that is exactly what the eviction system is for. And then you're going to have trouble getting another rental property because that eviction is going to be on your record. And it's not because there's something wrong with the legal process or that the landlord is trying to screw you, because you screwed the landlord over and you deserve what you're getting. So yeah, I absolutely, it frustrates me reading stuff like this, because it makes the tenant sound like, oh, they just were confused. They didn't know what was going on. Well, they had every opportunity to figure it out. And most likely the landlord would have worked with them if they had actually, tried to make sure that the landlord got paid. Instead, they just thought they could get away with, living for free. And that, hey, if that eviction ends up stuck on your record and you're not able to rent another place, so be it. Red Door Collective says they've looked at all current detainer warrant data, finding there's an average of about 150 evictions per week. In July alone, they say almost 640 detainer warrants were filed, with 526 eviction rulings. So yeah, it looks like eviction rulings are about 4 times higher than they were before. Okay, so that's a huge increase. And it's a good thing because the landlords will be able to take their property back, but it's most likely they won't be able to recover all that lost rent. The detainer warrant is meant to be a notification of a court date, but so many times we see detainer warrants that are being put on people's doors and it doesn't have the court date on it, or we'll say something like earliest Tuesday, which technically means the earliest date the plaintiff's lawyer shows us, said Jack Marr with Red Door Collective. We know from data the vast majority of judgments that are awarding possession, so awarding the eviction, are because they're by default. So we're tracking the judgments, and it's like 75% of the time, the reason why people are kicked out of their homes is because they didn't show up to court. No, actually, most of the time, people are being kicked out of their homes because they didn't pay the rent, okay? That is the truth, okay? Not showing up to court has nothing to do with not paying the rent. The reason that they are not showing up to court is because they know they can't fight their case, because there is no excuse for them not paying, because they actually can't afford to live in the place that they are staying, and they knew they were going to lose anyway, so why even show up? Okay? That's why Marr and Oswald say it's so important to show up to court. There is no mechanism in the state to expunge an eviction off your tenant record, and there shouldn't be, okay? An eviction just shows lack of financial responsibility. And that's not something that anyone should be, proud of. But, like when I am renting out a property to a tenant, all I can say is I have very few things that I can actually look at. Obviously I can look at your criminal history. I can look at your credit history. I can look at your eviction history, okay? And I can call your previous employers and call your references and all that. But when I see an eviction on your record, that is the number one red flag that tells me, okay, no exceptions. I do not want you in my property, because if you did this to another landlord, you could very well do it to me. And I don't want that kind of thing to happen to me. And, all the other stuff, it's minor by comparison to that eviction being on your record. So I got to tell tenants the truth, okay? You should go to court. Now, I don't think that a lot of these cases that you have much anything to argue, but if you went to court and maybe you explained your situation to the landlord, they might be able to work with you. The big problem, as I said already a couple of times in this video, is that by the time that we get to the point of eviction, a lot of the tenants, they don't even want to go to court because they know they've already lost. They know that they are in the wrong, and they know that there's nothing they can do except for leave.